He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome to Coast Vue. This is the show that celebrates the men and women who are working so hard to make this a great place to live, work, and play. And I'm so privileged today to have the Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Biloxi, Bishop Louis F. Kihneman III. We call him Bishop Kihneman. And he was ordained, or not ordained, but he was installed as the Bishop of Biloxi on April of 2017. I'm not going to do a big introduction because we're actually going to talk about his story and where he came from and his passions in life, the challenges of the church these days in this pandemic environment, and so on. So we'll get right to it. Bishop, thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you, Ricky.
So I mentioned the bishop had asked for permission to say this, but he came from Corpus Christi where the fishing is really good. And he came to Biloxi, and he started to try to fill this place out pretty quickly and learned that the fishing's good here too, didn't you, Bishop?
Amen to that. Amen to that. It's been fun.
Yeah, the bishop fishes with my son Jordan and me, and we really enjoy that. We live close by, so we get together from time to time. We've really enjoyed our time together. And so anyway, Bishop, I thought we'd start with this. There was a terrific story yesterday in the Financial Times, and the headline said, "A Search for the Divine, How the Pandemic Reinvigorated Religion." And it's a subtitle that essentially says this: "From drive-through confessions to solitary funerals, faith leaders are finding new ways to connect." And here's another thing that it went on to say that I think really applies well. He says, "The world's face, the coronavirus pandemic has been a head-on collision. Thousands of years of rituals, confession, communal prayers, feasts were built on the assumption that worshipers could be together and touch each other. Suddenly, religious buildings are closed while sharing bread is unthinkable." But it also goes on to say this: "Despite all of this, the pandemic has spurred a minor religious renaissance." It's been so interesting to see how technology has changed things. What's been your experience? What have you seen in this odd time that we're in?
Well, it's really made it possible for us to be able to reach out to our folks, especially through social media. That's been really an area of growth that we've needed as a church, and it's caused us to really grow in that area in a big way, and it's enabled us to really connect to people a bit. That it is interesting giving a homily, and all you have is the cameras and nobody there, so you have to image the people behind it to kind of get a connection. But the people, they've been writing in and saying, we've been sitting in our easy chairs or our sofas with our kids, and we've been celebrating the Mass with you through social media communion, and it's been a joy. They're sitting there with their little socks on and their pajamas, and it's really a comfortable moment for them. So I think they have found some real gift in this too, although it's been a challenge.
I know it has been, but I tell you, no matter who I talk to, technology's enabled so many different industries. Like, for example, telemedicine with doctors and distance learning with kids in school, and just corporate meetings and the way they're held today using Zoom and other capabilities. As you know, my son Justin works for Price Waterhouse, and he's been working here for 2 months, and technology's enabled him not to miss a lick in that process. And I follow you on Instagram and Facebook. And I really admire what the diocese has done to try to connect with people. And as you know, we're parishioners from St. Michael Catholic Church in Biloxi on the Point. And Father Monsignor Fulham has done a terrific job of connecting us. And what we've tried to do is sort of maintain that same cadence that we had. We're still going to church at 10 on Sundays, and the family's still coming together. It's not at the church, but it's in our living room. But we feel like we've not missed a whole lot. I mean, we've missed communion, obviously, and there's a process around that as well. But it's been being able to connect using technology has helped us feel like we've stayed on track in terms of our religious practices. And you hear that over and over again, don't you?
I do. I have a lot of families have kind of described the same thing. And we've even had pastors that literally have contacted every single one of their parishioners individually. That's hundreds and hundreds of people. So God bless them. I've even called all the priests myself personally to just stay in contact with them, which means I've had about 80 phone calls to make. So,
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
it's been both a challenge, but it's also been good to try to stay in contact in this kind of a moment. And uh, I just have to. 100 years ago, when they had the Spanish flu pandemic, they didn't have all this, and to stay in contact with each other would have been really difficult. So at this point, with this kind of pandemic and this social media, we're really able to stay in contact with each other in a big way.
Well, through my conversations with you, I have learned the complexity of the diocese. It's got so many different dimensions, the parishes, the schools, the ministries, the senior homes, and so much more. There's a lot to say grace over. And I know the pandemic has challenged the diocese in so many different ways, and you've been able to respond in many ways to those challenges. But it's been interesting watching how you've adjusted. But let's do this. We're going to get into the structure of the diocese and the kinds of things that take your time these days. But what I wanted to do is give people a bit of a sense of you and where you came from. So what I want to do, it would literally take the whole show to talk about your story, because your story, you have such a diverse background. You've been involved in the church in so many different roles. But you were ordained into priesthood in 1977 in Corpus Christi, and your first assignment was in Ortega, Mexico. And we'll come back to Mexico in a second. That created, I think, maybe you had the passion before you went there, but certainly you have a passion for the ministry in Mexico today. As I mentioned, you had a lot of assignments along the way, many different assignments, but you were actually in the Corpus Christi Diocese for 39 years. And then, of course, you came to Biloxi as the fourth bishop in April of 2017. It's so interesting seeing your story, and I know your passion for Corpus Christi, as I mentioned earlier, and your passion for Mexico and what's happening there. But what stands out as you look back in your past, and you think about the kind of things that helped you position you to be the bishop of Biloxi today. What are some of the things that stand out for you?
Well, a combination of things. Is partly where I grew up. I was actually born in Lafayette, Louisiana. I used to go to summer camp in Bay St. Louis and Pass Christian. So I had a connection with this area myself at the very beginning, and had no idea I would be coming back as the bishop. Uh, and then, eventually, when we moved from Louisiana to Corpus Christi, and into the seminary, was ordained a priest there, and uh, assigned in Mexico first. That was by my request to finish learning Spanish, and also to kind of get to know the people and really fall in love with them. And that's what happened. And then from there on, had assignments in which I had Spanish masses at most of the parishes I was assigned to, and really a connection with the folks. A diversity of assignments that, some of them had Catholic schools, some of them didn't. Some of them were the poorest of the poor in the United States. Some were wealthy parishes, or at least upper middle class. But all the people and all the time spent with the people really was a loving relationship, a building relationship, a relationship of Jesus Christ, and building community together. And that's really part of what I bring to the office of bishop here, is to be able to bring people together, to be able to celebrate the love of Jesus Christ together.
And you're bilingual.
Yeah, definitely. I speak Spanish fluently, and so I celebrate Mass in Spanish here in the diocese. We have 7 Spanish-speaking communities, which I dearly love. Of course, our African American communities, we have 7 of those too, and I dearly love our folks. Man, they pray together and worship together just powerfully. And of course, everyone else, all of our parishes have been very welcoming, very loving, very caring. It's a joy to celebrate confirmations. It's a joy to go and celebrate the different celebrations, the anniversaries, the feast days. Even the carnivals they have, or the fiestas they have. All of that's been joy to be a part of.
So let's give people a sense of the Diocese of Biloxi. 17 southern counties of Mississippi, established in 1977. People might be surprised to hear that it used to be part of the Jackson area, but it became its own in 1977. That's the reason why you're the fourth.
Correct.
So such an interesting history. But tell us about the diocese.
Well, the diocese actually was formed in the year I was ordained a priest. And Bishop House was the first bishop of the Diocese of Biloxi. And so a lot of what has come together over the years has been with his really fingerprints on it. He's really been a tremendous person that's helped
Bishop,
this diocese come together.
Let's do this. We'll pick it up with Bishop House's contributions and legacy when we come back from the break, and we'll continue the conversation about the formation of the Biloxi Diocese and sort of the geographic area and what it entails. So we'll be back after this break. This is Bishop Kihneman of the Catholic Diocese of Biloxi.
Subscribe for free to the Coast Vue podcast on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We have Bishop Kihneman, who is the bishop for the Diocese of Biloxi. And when we went to break, we were talking about the actual Biloxi Diocese was formed in 1977, actually the same year that he was ordained a priest, which seems like it was meant to be. And when we went to break, we were talking about Bishop Howes was the first bishop for the Diocese of Biloxi, and you were beginning to talk about his fingerprints were really important in those early days of the formation of the diocese. So why don't you continue from there?
Yeah, Bishop House really helped kind of set the direction and the tone of the whole diocese, and he really helped to bring the priests in who we have now, bring the religious communities in who we have now, and to build a diocese from scratch, literally, because it's a new diocese. There's only two dioceses in Mississippi, Jackson now and Biloxi. We have all of the south of Mississippi, and Jackson has from Jackson up north. And following, of course, Bishop House was Archbishop Rhodey. At that time, he was Bishop Rhodey, and he really, really worked hard in the diocese to help the diocese really get finally established, and then Katrina hit, and so he was significant during that time with the reorganization of the parishes, the schools, the diocese, and then following him was Bishop Morin, who helped to continue the work of the two earlier bishops, and then I got the phone call from the Holy Father saying he would like me to become the fourth bishop of the Diocese of Biloxi, which was quite a surprise, I have to admit. But it's been a joy. I have to admit, it's been a treat to be, and a challenge, but a treat to be with the people and to celebrate the love of Jesus Christ together. We are 52 churches, 15 schools. I've got 9 centers for our elderly. I've got a huge Catholic charities that we do as a diocese. It's been amazing, and we really are growing as a diocese. It's been a joy to be a part of it.
Well, I can hear it in your voice, and since I know you, I know that all of what you just said comes from the heart. But it also requires a leader who understands complexity and can manage complexity. And the more time we spend together, the more I understand just how much you have to say grace over. There's a lot. So let's just take us through it just a bit. You mentioned the elderly homes. I think people, the average person may not realize that that's such a big responsibility that you have, and particularly in this pandemic moment. Talk a little bit about that.
So we have as many as 9 homes for the folks that are elderly and need some place to live that will fit within their budget. And so those folks are under our housing department, and anywhere between 700-800 to 1,000 people at any given time are in those particular housing circumstances. We do work hand in hand with the federal government and the state government with that, and we have a team of people that run them. But they are really an important part of the diocese, and I think an important contribution that we make as a diocese to the folks that are in that kind of age bracket, to be able to enable them to have really good housing, protected housing in which they feel safe, but also housing that also respects their dignity in their golden years, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So is there a moment in the time when you and your key staff sat down and said, okay, this pandemic is real. We have to do a lot of different things to begin to think about how we protect our parishioners, those involved in our ministry, those involved in senior living situations or whatever. There must have been some really heavy lifting in the early days of this situation.
Well, it really was, and it happened very fast. So we really had to do some serious consulting quickly. So we did consult a virologist here in Mississippi, and also we're very conscious of the CDC, and some of us actually were on the meetings with the CDC, and also with the president's committee that he formed to work out some of the details of what needed to happen to protect our people. And praise God, everything we put in place has kept the pandemic really at bay. There's been a minimum of people that have contracted the illness that have been in our homes, and I'm really very grateful to our staff for following through on all our guidelines that we sent out, but also to the people themselves. They have been very much wanting to be cared for and protected at the same time. The same has been true for our schools. We were having to postpone classes initially, and then we shifted into really social media mode and direct contact with the students, but through social media. And so we didn't miss a beat, actually. We had all of our students in class with their teachers, but socially on Zoom or whatever format they were using, and able to take the students through actually the rest of the semester, and enabling those who are celebrating their graduations now from both from high school, but also some from the 6th grade and some of our kindergarten classes, but within the guidelines that we've set out to protect our people.
Yeah, my daughter Tori Williams is a teacher at St. James, and watching it through her eyes and her activities, it's been something to behold. I mean, you're right. In the beginning, a little bit of a kind of a transition struggle, but man, once they got up and running with Zoom and assignments and grading and all the things that she was doing, I know it's not easy, and there are probably a lot of parents out there, whether they're in the Catholic school system or public school system or wherever they are, who have kids in school who have a deeper appreciation for teachers today, because obviously this ramped up the role that parents play in the education process. But it has been something to watch. But Cal, can you show that picture of Tori and her fellow teachers? They did a modified graduation ceremony today, and this is Tori and 3 of her teacher friends with their St. James school logoed face mask on. But again, it's not the same as it would have been, but they found a way to adjust so that the kids could at least have some, the sixth graders have some kind of a graduation ceremony that would be something they could remember. And I know that you've been attending the same kind of graduation ceremonies. You did one, actually last night, correct?
I did. We had St. Patrick's graduation last night. We had 55 seniors graduate, and we were able to have the seniors with Mass in the cathedral, and then their families were in the Sacred Heart Center, and they were wearing Mass also, but they were able to participate, through social media, and really was a powerful evening, and I was deeply touched by the graduates. There was one particular moment during the Mass in which we pray the Our Father, and almost all the graduates had their hands up in the orans form of prayer, and it really spoke loudly of their desire to celebrate that moment, but in the love of Jesus Christ. It was powerful, and all of our teachers, I've been complimenting them right and left because they have gone above and beyond the call of duty in many ways, and love them deeply. They have given their lifeblood to their students,
Yes.
and they really have spent a lot of time. It's almost been like it's been personal education 101, almost 101. Even though they may have a class with all the kids up on Zoom, but still, they really have stayed connected, and I shared that last night as being their way of sharing the love of Jesus Christ with the children and the youth, and very powerful. So you can see the signs in each of those little graduations. The little kindergartners are graduating also with in their little pixies. They're so cute, and then the sixth graders, of course, doing their own little graduation to get into middle school and high school. And of course, the seniors, we've got OLA tonight, Our Lady Academy tonight, and that'll be very, very powerful. This will be our fourth one.
As you were telling the story about the cathedral last night, and I could picture the picture that you posted on Instagram of the kids, the graduates spaced out, practicing social distance in the cathedral, and no parents or family visible. Obviously, they were in another building, and this moment where you said that they had their hands up, I actually got a chill hearing you tell that story. There are all kinds of silver linings that come from a situation like this. All you have to do is look for it. And I see many people, I talk to people every day that are always looking for those inspirational moments. And this is a moment they'll probably never forget for the rest of their lives, but maybe it will affect them in positive ways that we don't now know. So we'll be back with Bishop Kihneman from the Biloxi Diocese right after this break.
Follow SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on Facebook. Facebook.com/SuperTalk MS Coast 103.1.
He's the former president and publisher of the Sun Herald, and now he's on the radio. Welcome to Coast Vue with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast Vue. We have Bishop Kihneman, who is the bishop for the Catholic Diocese of Biloxi. We're having a terrific conversation, started with discussion about his life and how the pandemic has impacted the diocese, what the diocese is made up of, and other interesting things. Great conversation about the schools that we just had just now. Bishop, as we begin to think about going back to church, it's going to be a modified form probably until there's a vaccine, most likely. So let's talk about that. Tell us about the process that you've gone through, and then what should a parishioner know about going back to church and how to proceed?
Sure. It has been quite a process. We have, as I mentioned earlier, discussed with a virologist here in Mississippi, very personally, who's a Catholic, about what are some of the do's and don'ts that we need to look at. We've also looked at what the CDC has put out, the governor's office here in Mississippi, the federal government, and then our priest council has met to kind of work out the details of how this could look, what's the best way to have this take place to keep our people safe, but still to open. So what we're going to have, and I guess for people to keep in mind as they are thinking about coming back to church, if you're 65 or older, staying home is still okay. You do not have the obligation to come to Mass and to receive communion at this point, just because of the pandemic. If you have an underlying issue, a health issue, you do not have to come to church. So I encourage you to stay home. We're going to continue live streaming the Masses in the various parishes that are already live streaming it. So when you come to church, we're going to have a cleansing station for people to cleanse their hands as soon as they come in. We're going to have, if you have Mass, bring your Mass. If you don't have a Mass, we'll provide a Mass for you. Our intention is we're highly recommending everyone wear a mask in the church. And then what we'll do is have you in family units 6 feet apart. So if you're a family of 4 or 5, you'll sit together because you're living together already with masks on. And then everyone else will stay 6 feet away from you, and the next family or the next couple or the next individual will be located around you. And everyone, again, wearing masks. We will have a cantor at the Mass, usually with a musician, to be able to still do some singing, but with masks on. We'll have communion available during the Mass for those that are going to come forward for Holy Communion. And then I've asked the parishes also to be aware that if the church, we're only going to have 50% of the church that is possible to have attendance. So if the church fills up, in other words, we're at 50% or less, they need to have a secondary location in which families can participate in the Mass and on social media. And then we will send ministers over for Holy Communion, for them to receive Holy Communion in the secondary location. So we're really making an effort to have everyone that comes have the opportunity to assist in Mass. There may be some that can't assist in the church itself. They may be in a secondary location, but all the cleansing, the wearing of mask, and all of that will take place at the secondary location too. The priests will be very careful when they give communion. If they touch someone, they will cleanse their hands. If someone by chance receives communion on the tongue, they will also cleanse their hands immediately. And so there's a real importance on let's try to protect our people. Let's try to protect our priests also, everyone, to be as safe as we can. But we really do need to open. We need to come together and celebrate the Eucharist together.
So you mentioned over 65, and of course those with pre-existing conditions. What about caregivers that are with those who are vulnerable, whether they be in the elderly group or even under 65 group? What I heard is that you're mostly, unless you have some pre-existing illness and unless that, if you're under 65, you really want people to experience communion. That's basically the change here, right?
It is, and we are encouraging people, of course, to really protect themselves when they're both working but at home. And then for those folks that may have had the coronavirus already, we're asking them to at least have 14 days since they have had the symptoms of the virus, and then to have 2 negative tests regarding the virus before they come back to church. And that, we're hearing from the virologist, should be enough to protect both the person that's had the coronavirus, but also the persons that have not had it.
So you're not checking temps.
Some churches will check the temperature, but I'm not requiring that because you don't always know, and so. But yeah, some churches, they may have temperature checks. We have a couple of still hot spots in the diocese. So Moss Point is one of them. So they're going to open a little later. And then Hattiesburg is another one. And they're going to open a little later, those churches. And some of those churches are going to be checking temperatures just because it's a hotter spot than it is in the south of Mississippi.
Yeah, I get it. And essentially you're going to, just like every other community, you're like a community. You're going to be looking at the data, see what the data tells you. And if the data tells you there's reason for us to be more concerned in this geographic area versus this area over here, you'll respond to whatever the moment is bringing to you and new information, correct?
That's our intention at this point.
Yeah.
We're gonna kind of go with the flow. We had a bit of a hot spot with some of our Spanish-speaking people in Hattiesburg, so we are just going to continue to stream the Mass in Spanish to that group of folks initially right now. And we're going to wait till we need to give it at least 14 days. So they're not going to be able to open the Spanish Mass for another 2 weeks at least. And we're going to see the circumstances. But we're going to continue streaming the Mass for everyone at home. And so to be in social communion together is going to be, I think, important for us as a church.
Excellent. Any other comments about restarting the actual church services where people attend? Yeah.
I do want to invite the folks to consider coming back. If you're uncomfortable on the first weekend, that's fine, just to see how things go. It's up to you, but really do want to have us as a church to begin to worship together, to begin to pray together, and most importantly, to be able to receive Holy Communion together. And just encourage all of our people who are at home to continue to pray together and share the love of Jesus Christ together.
Thank you so much. For the people who appreciate that detailed explanation. I want to shift gears in the time that we have left for this particular section and talk just a little bit about the ministries, because there are so many different and important ministries that go on every day as part of the diocese. And all of them have been impacted. So can you do a little bit of a review on, you don't have to do them all, but just kind of give people a sense of how ministries have been impacted and why they're important to the diocese?
Well, it has made quite a shift, so our youth ministry has even shifted even more to social ministry and social media. The same thing with regard to all of our religious education classes. And we are in the process of scheduling people now to be received into the church through the sacraments of initiation. I'm starting to schedule confirmations again. Catholic Charities, for example, has given out in the last probably 5 weeks 400,000 pounds of food. They were averaging 600 calls a day for people that were needing assistance and help. We've reached out to the people that were hit with the tornado in Laurel and in Bassfield, and we're enabling them to get back into housing. There's just been a tremendous amount of Christ's love that's being spread by our people. All of our school teachers, there's 450 of them, they have ministered to our 4,000 young people. It's really been a blessing to see, but also a challenge at the same time to lift up the name of Jesus Christ and his church, but also to do it in a way that reaches out to the people, especially in social media.
Yeah, it's such an interesting time. Things like marriage and family life and how important that has been to the diocese. Have you been able to continue with aspects of that?
We have, and we're actually in the process of training our folks in the different deaneries. We break the diocese in 5 different deaneries, and to begin to really help in marriage preparation, the marriage retreats, and also enable couples to really experience Jesus Christ in their marriages specifically.
So let's do this. We'll go to break and we'll come back for the final segment. This is Bishop Kihneman from the Diocese of Biloxi, and we'll close it out after this break.
You can also listen live to SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1 on your Amazon Alexa devices. Once you've enabled the skill, just say, Alexa, open SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast.
Talking to the people that help make the coast such a unique place to live. This is Coast View with Ricky Mathews on SuperTalk Mississippi Gulf Coast 103.1.
Welcome back to Coast View. We're having just a terrific conversation with Bishop Kihneman, who is the bishop for the Biloxi Diocese. We've really kind of covered the waterfront, but I hope that what you're getting from this conversation is a deeper appreciation for the role the Catholic Church plays from Jackson to the coast. It's a large diocese. Bishop has a lot to say grace over. There are somewhere between 60 and 70,000 Catholics in the diocese, right? Is that somewhere in about the right area? Yeah. Yep. So there's a lot of people that are served, and people who are not Catholics are also served in ways. So this is a really important Catholic diocese for really important religious group for coastal Mississippi. There are a lot of Catholics here, and they've had their work cut out for them in this pandemic mode. And we all look forward to the day when we've got a vaccine and we can get back to work as normal. But until then, we just got to figure out how to live in this new world. That's something we talk about on this show every day. You and I have talked about Pope Francis before, and I want to close out. We just spent a couple of minutes, but Pope Francis, there's a lot of firsts. When he came from Buenos Aires, and he's a Jesuit priest, so many firsts related to him. And he has really worked hard to open his arms to other religions and to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves. He's been just a strong advocate. I said to you offline, and we can talk a little bit more about this, but he may just be the perfect pope for this moment, for this pandemic moment. What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think the Lord knew what he was doing when he called him forth. And it was a rare moment of Pope Benedict resigning. And I think God guided Pope Benedict to step down and enable Pope Francis to come forward. And that he was raised up out of the College of Cardinals is quite a miracle in itself. And he has a heart really for the poor. He has the heart for those that are less fortunate. He really goes out of his way to be with those people that would be considered on the periphery of society and the periphery of the church. And he's really set a powerful example for all of us. I've enjoyed meeting him twice, had a chance to visit with him personally. He's very personable. He loves the church. He loves the world. He wants only the best for the world, and he really does want to have Jesus Christ's message preached to all the world, and to have us make disciples and baptize all nations. I mean, that comes out strongly every time I meet with him. So he's a joy to have as a leader.
For our listeners who want to know more about him, you can you go to Netflix. There's actually one movie, Two Popes. Interesting about the transition from Pope Benedict to Pope Francis. And then there's a documentary where you really get to know Pope Francis really well. Hey, in the closing minutes, why don't you, what do you say to people who are really struggling on the coast now? So many without jobs, and hopefully they'll get back to work soon, but they're worried about how they're going to make ends meet. They're worried about how they're going to feed their family. Talk to them.
Yeah, I just want to speak, to all of our folks that have been affected by the coronavirus, those that have had the virus, those who've had families that have lost a loved one because of the virus, that we're praying for you and really inviting you to, in this difficult moment, to let the love of Jesus Christ touch your life and let him really give you hope. It's the time of the resurrection. And even though you may have lost your job even at this point, it really is a time in which we are to place ourselves in the hands of God, because God really does want to hold us. He wants to embrace us with his love, and he wants to share his love with us. And we as a church, we as a people are trying to do that and image that for our people in southern Mississippi, and just encourage all of our owners of the different businesses to continue to find ways to open, continue to find ways to call your people back to work, that we can return to the really positive economy we had before the virus. And so I'm praying for all of you, and I remember each of you in Mass that I pray daily. May God bless you and be with you and touch you.
Thank God. So listen, I talk every day on this show about how important tourism is, that we've got to open back up again. We got to do it safely. We need the world to see us as a safe place to visit. Ashley and I will talk about that again in just a minute. But I say it every single day. Everybody's got a role to play. But what I hope for you is that you continue to have God's blessing in your leadership. And we're lucky to have you, Bishop. And I'll ask Kyle to show one last little picture of one of our trips last year where we had a great time catching some speckled trout. And I hope one day soon you'll have the opportunity to get a breather and go do that again. And as you enjoy the bounty of coastal Mississippi. So this was such a wonderful place to live. So anyway, Bishop, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, and God bless you too, Ricky, and your family.
Thank you so much. We'll see you later. Have a great day.
Amen.
Listen live or on demand and watch episodes of Coast Vue on your laptop, desktop, or on your phone or tablet by going to supertalkmsgulfcoast.com.